Two more suspected package bombs have been intercepted in the U.S. On Wednesday, the FBI told Reuters they were both sent to California Democrat Maxine Waters, an outspoken critic of President Donald Trump. TV stations in Los Angeles showed a bomb disposal robot at a local postage facility on Wednesday, though it's not clear if it was handling the parcels in question. It brings the total number of suspicious packages to 8, all of them intercepted before they reached their targets. Officials on Wednesday called it an act of terrorism. Top Democrats, including Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, appear to have been targeted. Investigators were tracking down another parcel they believe was sent to Joe Biden, Obama's vice president. And a device resembling a pipe bomb was discovered at CNN's office in New York. The network's anchors were forced to continue their coverage from the street. Reuters correspondent Jonathan Allen was there.
One thing that links all the recipients of these packages, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, prominent Democrats, George Soros, one of the biggest donors to liberal causes and left-wing causes on the planet, CNN, a nonpartisan news organization, but nonetheless attacked by critics on the right as being partisan, including the president himself, who calls it fake news, of course. So what seems to be a link here is that all the recipients so far are, in some ways, criticized by figures on the right.
Those engaged in the political arena must stop treating political opponents as being morally defective.
President Trump, who frequently bashes Democrats and the media, softened his tone at a rally in Wisconsin Wednesday night, joining politicians on both sides of the aisle calling for unity. He also said a, quote, aggressive investigation is underway. It all comes just 2 weeks before the contentious U.S. midterm elections. So far, there's been no claim of responsibility. U.S. officials uncover more suspicious packages.
The trail of blame over Khashoggi moves closer to the Crown Prince.
Indonesia hops on board a new recycling scheme.
In his toughest comments yet, US President Donald Trump is laying the responsibility of Jamal Khashoggi's killing on the Saudi Crown Prince, telling the Wall Street Journal that Prince Mohammed bin Salman bears ultimate responsibility for the operation that led to his killing, because he's, quote, running things in Saudi Arabia. Turkey's president may have stopped short of blaming the powerful crown prince, but his lawmakers are pointing the finger too. One of Erdogan's advisors says Riyadh's de facto ruler has, quote, blood on his hands. Riyadh has blamed a rogue operation for the death of the prominent Saudi journalist in their Istanbul consulate. That's been dismissed by Erdogan, who is calling it a well-planned, savage murder.
It's been 3 weeks since Khashoggi was killed, and still investigators are searching for the journalist's body. Police are now focusing in on a well in the back garden of the Saudi Consul General's house. It's about a 5-minute walk from the Saudi consulate. At first, Saudi officials refused to allow the search to take part, and that's just one of a number of delays since investigations started.
Turkish authorities have been pretty tight-lipped publicly on the Turkish investigation, but not when it comes to the pro-government press here. With a steady drip of leaked information from anonymous sources, local media have had the world gripped. The most shocking leak, that there's an alleged audio recording of the journalist's killing. Notably not mentioned by Erdogan in his detailed address to Parliament about the investigation on Tuesday. There's also been a series of CCTV leaks showing the group of 15 Saudi nationals that arrived in Turkey and entered the consulate on the day Khashoggi was killed, including this one. It appears to show a man entering the Saudi Arabia consulate while Khashoggi was inside, only to leave hours later through the back door in what appears to be his clothes. Erdogan insisting Wednesday his country would not allow those responsible for his killing to avoid justice, keeping up pressure on Riyadh in a death that could spark a regional crisis. For the kingdom's allies, the question is whether it tarnishes the image of someone who's been hailed the kingdom's great reformer.
A warning from the world's largest tech giant, Apple, over just how vulnerable our customer data is.
Our own information, from the everyday to the deeply personal, is being weaponized against us with military efficiency.
Apple CEO Tim Cook was in Brussels on Wednesday at an international data privacy event.
Technology is capable of doing great things.
He stopped short of shaming other companies for putting profits over customer privacy, but said algorithms, a major tool for competitors, were taking online profiling too far. He said, quote, "We shouldn't sugarcoat the consequences. This is surveillance." It may have been a shot at rivals Google and Facebook. The iPhone maker says Apple designs many of its products specifically so that it can't see users' data, which is why, they say, it has largely avoided the many privacy scandals that have surrounded the other two companies.
We at Apple are in full support of a comprehensive federal privacy law in the United States.
Cook also said he'd like to see stronger privacy laws enacted in the US, similar to the sweeping Data Protection Act the EU implemented last May.
I want to begin tonight's rally by addressing the suspicious devices and packages that were mailed to current and former high-ranking government officials. Any acts or threats of political violence are an attack on our democracy itself. Those engaged in the political arena must stop treating political opponents as being morally defective. Have to do that. The language of moral condemnation and destructive routine, these are arguments and disagreements that have to stop. No one should carelessly compare political opponents to historical villains, which is done often, it's done all the time. There is one way to settle our disagreements. It's called peacefully at the ballot box. That's what we want.
Chinese and Russian spies are listening in on U.S. President Donald Trump's cell phone. That's according to a New York Times report on Wednesday. It cited current and former U.S. officials who told the Times that when Trump gossips with old friends on an unsecure line, Beijing uses what it learns to try and sway U.S. policy. The report says Trump's aides have repeatedly warned him that his cell phone calls are not secure, but he refuses to give up the phones. The White House did not immediately respond to Reuters' requests for comment on the Times reporting. Officials cited in the report say China has taken a meticulous approach to what it learns from the calls and uses them to find out what Trump thinks, who he listens to, and how best to sway him. Those U.S. officials are also cited as saying Beijing is focused on using what it learns to prevent the U.S.-China trade war from escalating further, and that Chinese officials rely on Chinese businessmen and others with ties to Beijing to feed arguments and views to Trump's friends in an attempt to try and influence him. This year has seen alarms raised several times on cell phone surveillance in the Washington area. In March, the Department of Homeland Security said in a letter to several senators it had spotted activity there, similar to that of tools used to eavesdrop on mobile phones.
Britain's Dyson surprised the auto industry this week when it said the company's first electric car would be built in Singapore. But why? It's been nearly 40 years since a car ever rolled off a production line there. Land prices are a premium in the Southeast Asian city-state, and costs are sky high. Dyson CEO says it's closer to big Asian markets.
China is a major automotive market, the major automotive market you could argue globally, so we need to take that very seriously.
But why not build in China, like Tesla's doing? Reuters' Aradhana Aravinda says it's becoming a crowded market and intellectual protections aren't as strong.
Experts say Singapore has strong policies regarding intellectual property rights, whereas there may be a few more concerns in China regarding those. Also in China, experts have pointed to the risk of overcapacity in the electric vehicle market. The government there, in fact, has removed tax breaks for about 2,000 electric vehicle car designs.
Singapore, meanwhile, has a free trade agreement with China, and is well placed to source components from across Southeast Asia.
The government offers many tax breaks and incentives for companies to be here. Singapore has a large English-speaking, talented workforce, skilled workforce, and it has a very large port which makes it easy to ship your car from the factory to its market.
That would be crucial, as not many sales would be driven from the local market. Singapore is one of the most expensive places in the world to own a car, due to government regulation of vehicles. A 400-strong team has been working secretly on Dyson's multi-billion-dollar electric car project. No designs have been seen yet, but Dyson says it will not be like anything else on the market.
3 years held hostage in Syria has finally come to an end for this Japanese freelance journalist. That confirmed by Junpei Yasuda himself in a video released on Wednesday.
My name is Junpei Yasuda, Japanese journalist. I have been held in Syria for 14 months. Now in Turkey. Now I'm in safe condition.
Reports suggest Yasuda was captured by an al-Qaeda affiliate after he crossed over into Syria from Turkey in 2015, only making contact with the rest of the world through the occasional video released by his captors.
Hello, I am Junpei Yasuda, and today is my birthday, 16 March. They told me that I can speak in what I want freely, and I can send a message through this to anyone. I love you, my wife, father, mother, brother. I always think about you. I want to hug you.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said he was relieved about the release and thanked Qatar and Turkey for their help in freeing him, which involved no ransom being paid. The foreign minister says Yasuda will be brought home as soon as possible. 2 other Japanese nationals, one a journalist, Kenji Goto, were captured by the Islamic State in Aleppo in 2014. Both were beheaded. Yasuda's release marks the second time he has survived a hostage situation. He was also held in Baghdad in 2004 and drew criticism for involving the government in the negotiations for his release.
India's taking on China to be the world's next smartphone-making powerhouse. Big names in the market like Samsung and even China's Xiaomi are all driving cash into the country and bringing manufacturers like Foxconn with them. India's domestic market is deep and its workforce is cheap, while China's labour costs are on the rise. And that's already helped India pull ahead to world #2 mobile phone maker. Reuters correspondent Sankar Patial has been visiting factories, trying to make phones just like their Chinese rivals, but with a more attractive price tag.
I'm standing in the factory of homegrown mobile phone maker Lava International on the outskirts of capital New Delhi. Here they make smartphones which are sold domestically and also exported. Specifically on this floor, they mount components onto a printed circuit board. This is a printed circuit board and it looks like this after components are mounted on it. Now this makes up nearly 50% of a cost of a smartphone.
Smartphones are one of Prime Minister Modi's few success stories. His promise to create tens of millions of jobs as part of a so-called Make in India drive has stuttered on more than one front. And in the run-up to a general election next year, smartphone manufacturing could help him stave off critics.
A novel way to combat plastic waste. Indonesia's second-largest city is encouraging residents to recycle by giving free bus rides in exchange for used plastic bottles. In Surabaya, commuters can choose to drop off plastic bottles at terminals or directly pay their fare with them. A 2-hour bus ticket costs 10 plastic cups or up to 5 plastic bottles. The city hopes the scheme will help it meet an ambitious target of becoming plastic-free by 2020. City data shows that 15% of Surabaya's daily waste is plastic. That's nearly 400 tonnes. A single bus can collect roughly 7.5 tonnes in a month. After collection, labels and bottle caps are taken off and the waste is auctioned off to recycling companies. The money made then goes towards running the bus operations and funding green spaces in the city. Studies show that Indonesia, an archipelago of thousands of islands, is thought to be the world's second-largest contributor of plastic pollution.